My name is ProfRich, and today we're going to be practicing the IELTS speaking exam. And we're going to do that live, so we'll see how wonderfully this goes. The plan is I will invite you guys right here, right now, to join me in a Zoom call. You only require audio. In fact, I'll only be using audio, not be using any cameras from viewers. For now, who knows? In the future, maybe, but let's try this first. The last time we tried this, it went horribly wrong, but I was trying to use Discord, so maybe things will go better now with Zoom. So the information to join Zoom is already in the Discord. And there are a few people who've joined already. And yeah, we're going to get right into it. We're going to do some IELTS speaking with a brave student to start off with. And we're going to then talk about the language that was used and if there's anything we could improve with that language. And we'll also highlight any positive comments as we go. I'll just take a moment to say hello to everybody in the chat. So hello to the usuals, and welcome to Younes Taleb from Morocco, did you say? Wonderful. I have some people who recommended Morocco to me recently. There's a lot of places that I need to visit first, though, but yeah, Morocco is on the list. Morocco was really on the list when I lived in Spain. I had a long-term plan to go across from Gibraltar to Morocco. And that would have been fun, but didn't quite get enough time to do it. Now, something that is happening is I'm still getting the notification noises of people joining in Zoom, which is something that I don't want. So just give me a moment while I take a look at the settings and see if I can turn that off. I did think that I'd already turned that off. Look at that grammar. I did think that I had already turned it off. If anyone wants to know how you use the past perfect, then that's how you do it. I did think that I had already turned it off. Yeah, I'm still getting those notification sounds. And you're probably hearing those as well, actually, thinking about it. It does seem to be off in the settings. Let me just restart the meeting and see if that's what's required to make that happen. You're going to see me disappear in a moment. And there we have, I've disappeared. And we'll go back into this. Will I reappear? That's the question. Oh, I did. That's fantastic. Aha, yes, I do believe that the joining notifications are now off. Hey, it's a work in progress, folks. I've got my coffee. And I'm wearing my t-shirt that says, "Here Comes the Sun," which is called irony because I live in England. And I tell you, this summer, there's not too many good things to say about this summer. So, if you're on Zoom and you're about to join, you might want to mute the stream because otherwise you'll hear two voices. So in a moment, I'm going to bring someone in. Anthony. The name sounds familiar. Who's Anthony? Is that Dan? Whoever's down as Anthony, can you identify yourself in chat? Who is Anthony? There is an Anthony in the Zoom. Who is Anthony? I'm inviting you up, Anthony, for some IELTS practice. I'm sure I've talked to Anthony before. It was someone from East Asia, I think. All right, no go. And then we've got a Cyrillic name, which is difficult because I don't know how to identify someone with a Cyrillic name in Zoom. Who's the person with the Cyrillic name? 3-O backwards R and then Abdemoheba. I just want you to identify yourself in chat before I unmute you on Zoom. So I'm not unmuting random people from the internet on Zoom. Okay, let's go for it. Let's see what we get. Oh, that's not helpful, is it? Hello there. It's made me disappear. That's not what I wanted. Ah, that's better. Hello, hello. No go? All right, I'll put you back in the waiting room for now. Let's try Teshi. Are you ready, Teshi? You should mute the stream probably because you'll hear me on Zoom, and I think that's the better way of doing it. Excuse me. I thought Zoom would be an easy way of doing this. Hello, Teshi.
Greetings.
Fantastic. We have Teshi live. How are you doing?
Could be worse.
That's a good response. It could always be worse. All right, I tell you what, let's give you some simple part 1 IELTS questions, Teshi. Thank you for being the first person to step up.
My pleasure.
All right. Okay, so if you've practiced IELTS, you've probably heard these a million times before. So we're going to start talking about accommodation. Could you tell me about the type of accommodation you live in?
Right now, I'm living in a 2-story house with my parents, with 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. What else? Yeah, and a kitchen.
Hmm.
Oh my goodness.
And how would you compare living in a house to living in a flat?
Personally, I prefer living in a flat because it's more private, I would say. And I'm not a person who like to do, many things. I mean, I'm a homebody, so living in a flat is already enough for me. I don't really like to do many activities in a house, and a house is too big for me to, look after. So flat is, kind of decent for me.
All right. Why do you think that some people prefer to live in a house?
Because it's more customary, I would say, because of course it's bigger. I mean, the space is more spacious. You could add on anything in your house, and you can invite people over your house, do some activities, as opposed to a flat with limited space. You can not really do, so many things in there.
All right, fantastic. Let's talk about free time activities. What sort of things do you like to do in your free time?
in my spare time, I would love to watch movies like through my iPad and also playing games. I'm not a bookworm, so yeah, reading is not my cup of tea. I watch TV sometimes, but not that often anymore. Yeah, I used to addicted to watching the TV. Yeah, but because of the coming of Netflix, so yeah, I'm now addicted to Netflix, and I would, yeah, spend my time on that.
Do you think
for
that...
the sake of, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, like for the sake of learning English,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Do you think that outdoor activities are better for us than indoor activities?
It really depends. Because okay, I'm not outdoorsy. But outdoor activities kind of relates to like physical activities that I can think of, like playing sports, going for a walk. While indoor activities would be more about gathering together, like chatting or playing games, or like cooking together. It can be in that level too.
All right.
So yeah.
All right, thank you. Let's try a part two, Takeshi, now that you've kind of got into it a little bit. So part two, I think it's fair to say typically...
prepare like a piece of paper?
I'll show you a task. If you have a notepad, that's fine, because in the actual exam you're allowed to prepare some notes for about a minute. So if you have a notepad and pen, if not, if you just have some way of making notes on your computer or on your device, that's fine as well.
Oh my goodness.
Do you want to get a pen and a notepad a moment?
Yeah, just a second.
Yeah, no problem. So while Takeshi does that, I think it's fair to say that part two of the IELTS speaking exam is the part that students dislike the most on average. Some students perhaps do like it. Sleepwalker says the volume's a little bit low. All right. You mean for Takeshi or for me or for both of us? Let me turn it up a little bit for...
Okay, I'm ready. I got a piece of paper and a pen.
All right.
Should I like speak louder?
No, it's okay. I can adjust your volume from here. It's mainly on my side.
All right.
Right.
So you can hear me perfectly, right?
I can hear you, no problem. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, I'd like you to describe something you own, which is very important to you. You should say where you got it from, how long you've had it, and what you use it for. You'll talk about the topic for 1 to 2 minutes, and you have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes to help you if you wish, okay? So you now have about a minute to have a look at that and make some notes. All right?
Yeah.
Great. While Takeshi does that, folks in the chat, you can also take a little look there and have a think about that. And I think that one of the reasons why students dislike part two is that often it requires some degree of creative thinking. It's just that idea of when someone asks you to think of something on the spot, it can be difficult because you feel the pressure of the exam and so on. And I think that's one of the big challenges of part 2, especially if, for example, the part 2 question says, describe a restaurant that you went to recently, and you might not be a person who goes to restaurants very often. And that can really throw people off. And part of the exam preparation strategy is to prepare students to be able to talk about topics that they're not particularly familiar with, even if those topics come up. Because, of course, it is a speaking exam at the end of the day, so you shouldn't be punished for not being someone who goes to restaurants, for example. And so there are strategies to manage that while maintaining authenticity. Of course, there is also the strategy of just lying, and, you know, there's nothing particularly wrong with that in a speaking exam either. However, personally, I think it's better to be authentic. And so if you have a question like, tell us about a restaurant you've been to recently, and you're not someone who goes to restaurants, then the best way is to just flip the question a little bit and change it to something that either you can identify with, for example, ordering in takeaway, or talk about the reasons why you don't particularly eat out a lot and still try to hit the points on the task card. All right, Takeshi, are you ready?
Kind of.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, things that I own, is my phone, right, that I'm using right now. I got it from my parents. They bought this phone for me as in my 21st birthday, they bought it from a shop, actually the shop close to our house. And most of the time, ironically, I don't really use my phone to call people, but I do text a lot. Well, instead of calling people, I use this phone to study mainly because it comes with the internet, right? So yeah, I use it to study my university, watching Netflix, or doing some business like transfer money, or even taking pictures and put that picture in my blog, or even manage my blog. Also, I use my phone to listen to music because, study is kind of tough. So, getting to listen to music is kind of a way to relax myself. And the phone is not actually a flagship phone. It's just an ordinary smartphone, but it functions very well. I mean, so far, it appears to be lagging a bit, but still functionable. So I think it cost just around, well, in pound would be like £100, I would say, not that much. But it's kind of sentimental because it's a gift from my parents, and kind of appreciated that I didn't actually ask for this, but since they might see that I kind of have a hard time, working through my university life.
Thank
So
you. Thank you. Would it be easy to replace?
What? The phone?
Would the phone be easy to replace?
Replace what? For what?
To replace it with a new phone or another phone. For you, would it be would it be easy to replace?
Oh, for me, not really, because for me, the phone is mainly to call or to contact people, right? I'm not looking for some like extra features of it, like has excellent lanes. It just can function like, okay, let's, for example, like an iPhone, but if it can function a bit lesser than that, that would be fine. Yeah.
All right.
As long as
Okay.
the screen is not broken.
All right, fantastic. Okay, we will go into part 3 of the test now. If you just give me a second, though, because I'm just organizing my recordings of this to take a look at later. Great.
Sure.
All right. Great, so let's move on to part 3, and we'll have a discussion about that. Do you think that these days people rely too much on technology?
I would say absolutely. Like now it has become a part of our lives right now. It's kind of hard to live in like an obscure life because you kind of requires the technologies to do things for you. Okay, for example, if you want to pay like bills, you can do it directly from your phone. You don't need to go to a shop or a convenience store to pay it. So it gives convenience, and that convenience become ordinary now. It might be a must in the future, but now it seems hard not to live with them.
Mm. Do you think that these kinds of possessions give status to people?
Yeah, for some people, it really matters for them because they comes, they comes in many like levels, right? Yeah, let's take phone as an example. There are like many type or tier of phones that you can buy, and some people might consider like a flagship phone, okay, like an iPhone or Samsung S24, okay, as their accessory and can show that they are wealthy and yeah, they look cool. You see
Yeah.
them.
Do you think that that's a new thing in society, that people use possessions to show status?
Okay. In my opinion, I would say not really. I think it has been like this for centuries, I guess. Like it's a human nature that we once we make something, there must be like several kinds of it, and with multiple level range of prices, right? And of course, for example, the how would you call them? Like for the monarchy, they wouldn't use things like lower price. There must be something that display the extravagancy of that thing, showing that show your wealth, your status. If you happen to use just okay, let's come to the phone again. If you just use a phone, um, just a smartphone, like without any extra features, that would be kind of lame. I mean, it's the people as well. They might expect them to use something more, fancier to fit their ranks in the society.
So what do you think of this way of thinking, that people need certain objects to show status in society?
Kind of sad actually. I find it's not that necessary. I mean, when we judge people from their possessions, because it doesn't show that you're successful or not, you're wealthy or not. It's just things. Because okay, like a certain individual might value things differently. I might not care about phone that much. But when it comes to let's say like apartment, I might look for something fancier because I consider that having a full option apartment would kind of facilitate my life better.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Do you think do you think that this will ever change in the future?
The what? Come again, sorry.
Do you think that this will ever change in the future?
Oh my goodness. I don't think so, because it's more like that's what we like encounter every day and kind of pass on from generation to generation, this kind of mentality. So it's kind of hard to be changed. But it's it is individual as well. I it's not like everybody has to think in this way. Some might love to live in, like an obscure life, no bells and whistles, just minimal life. That could be a trend in the future, especially with this inflation. Yeah.
All right.
Possibly.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Takeshi. That's the end of the test, or that would be the end of the test if we were doing a test. Thank you very much for being the first.
Nervous.
Yeah, but you did very well. Thank you for being the first person to jump on and do that. And I think you could see you relaxed more as time went on. And I think there's a lot of interesting and strong language that we can look at there. In your example, which I will do now. So thank you very much for joining me. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see you next time, hopefully.
Sure, see you. Take care.
Cheers. All right. So I put Takeshi back in the waiting room, and we're going to listen back to some of the parts of that right now. Unfortunately, because it's the first time I'm doing this, the first part I recorded it and the volume was way too low. I can see from the sound wave that it's just super low. But from the second part onwards, we do have a recording there. And I just want to say thank you again to Takeshi for being the first person on the call. I think you did extremely well. So we're going to start with part 2, and to remind you, part 2 was talking about a thing you own. One of the big things about part 2 is just hitting all those points. So let's have a listen back to the recording of Takeshi doing part 2, and we'll see whether he did hit all those points. I think that is this one.
Kind of. Okay, things that I own.
Yeah, so this is part 2. This is Takeshi. We're going to have a listen, and this time we'll have a look at the language, and we'll be taking a look at language we can improve and language which I'll highlight as being quite positive. So I'll try to do this in this sort of format where we have let's have the positive language on the left there. No, we'll have the language we can improve on the left, and then we'll have the positive language on the right, and hopefully indicate what each of this language demonstrates and how it relates to the IELTS speaking band descriptors. Now, the public band descriptors that you can download, you can get those publicly. They are not the complete speaking band descriptors. The actual speaking examiners have something which is a little bit more comprehensive than this, but this is the public one that's available. Now, I think for Takeshi, we're going to be looking a bit higher than band 6, actually. So we'll be going perhaps to band 7, maybe. Well, let's go through it and see what we can hear. So let's have a listen to part 2 and go through some of this language.
Okay, things that I own, is my phone, right, that I'm using right now. I got it for.
So there's a bit of an issue with things that I own is my phone. Might sound a little bit odd, but then we followed that up with a subordinate clause, which is a dependent subordinate clause, which makes that first sentence a complex sentence, which is one of the things that we look out for in the sort of higher bands of speaking in general. So in the very first sentence, we've got both a positive and a negative. And I just want to remind you that mistakes are not the biggest issue in the world in speaking exams. With speaking exams, we're looking for what you can do. So making mistakes or slips, as we can call them, is just part of the process. Like when I'm talking, sometimes I say things which are not grammatically perfect. That's just real life. So we don't necessarily punish that. What we want to see is that overall you have the ability to manage complex structures, complex grammar, and your pronunciation's clear, and so on. So don't get hung up too much about mistakes. The problem here, by the way, if you can't spot it, is that there's a disagreement with the grammar there, where we say things that I own is my phone. We want the subject-verb agreement in English, so there's a bit of an issue with that. Right, let's carry on.
My parents, they bought this phone for me as in my 21st birthday. They bought it from a shop, actually the shop close to our house. And most of the time, ironically, I don't really use my phone to call people.
Specifically like the adverb ironically in that sentence of most of the time. Ironically, I don't use my phone to call people. And there was another issue there, which was that actually...
and most of the time, ironic, my 21st birthday, they bought it from a shop, actually the shop close to our house.
Right.
And
so we got another minor there. We're not too concerned about these things, but I'll say them just for Takeshi's sake. I'm sure you can hear it as well, Takeshi. Everyone makes these slips. Actually, the shop close to my house, missing something there. People make these kind of mistakes all the time. It's not an issue.
I used my phone to call people, but I do text a lot.
Nice. Okay. So not only I don't use my phone to call people, but also we've got the use of an auxiliary for emphasis.
Well, instead of calling people, I use this phone to study mainly because it comes with the internet, right? So yeah, I use it to study my university, watching Netflix, or doing some business like transfer money, or even taking pictures and put that picture in my blog, or even manage my blog. Also, I use my phone to listen.
So everything we heard there is good in terms of completing the task. there's nothing standing out in terms of language. And by standing out, I mean it all sounds kind of intermediate-ish. Positive because we're completing the task, and of course that's good.
Listen to music because, you know, study is kind of tough. So having to listen, getting to listen to music is kind of a way to relax myself.
So that's interesting. Getting to listen to music is, and that's something quite positive. We've got quite a complex noun phrase there of getting to listen to music. Even the use of get for get to do something. Getting to listen to music is. And then we had something like kind of a way to relax myself. I'm not too keen on the phrase relax myself. I'm not going to say people would never say that, but it's not the usual way of talking about relax. So we don't normally use relax reflexively, in other words. But nice noun phrase there, we're getting to listen to music.
And the phone is not actually a flagship phone. It's just an ordinary smartphone. But it functions very well. So far, it appears to be lacking a bit, but still functionable. So I think it costs just around, in pound would be like £100, I would say, not that much. But it's kind of sentimental because it's a gift from my parents, and kind of appreciate that. I didn't actually ask for this, but since they might see that I kind of have a hard time, working through my university life, so they, oh, sorry. Kind of.
Okay, so I think that's where I ended part 2, and we had the follow-up question, which I actually thought the follow-up question was a little bit strange myself. If we look up here, the follow-up question, the rounding off question was, would it be easy to replace? And it felt a little bit clunky asking that. Sometimes speaking exams go like that. And one of the things about speaking exams as an examiner is you have to use the script. You can say the script in different ways and you can repeat the script, but you have to use the words on the script in order to make the test fair for all candidates. If the examiner improvises too much, then it can make the test different. And you can see here that I made some positive notes about some of the things that Takeshi said there in the second part of part 2, particularly in terms of just navigating the language in general. It appears to be lacking a bit. It cost just around, in pounds, it would be like £100. And it's kind of sentimental. So the adjective sentimental, bit of nice language there. So I think things that we might want to see more of from Takeshi in that part is, well, unfortunately, it's a speaking test. And that means that we need to put in more complex grammar and more complex ways of saying things. That's just the way speaking tests go. So what kind of things might we say about our mobile phone? Well, we can throw in some second conditionals. I love the second conditional because it's so flexible, you know. Let me put myself back in here. Hello. Zoom's going to cancel me in a moment. I'll have to restart it. Thank you, Zoom. But let's throw in some excellent language here that we could use instead. And if you didn't want to, so if I had the chance, I'd upgrade. It's a useful structure with the second conditional. If I had the chance, I'd do something, right? It's pretty easy to remember that. If I had the chance, I'd, and you can demonstrate use of the second conditional. If you want that to fit what you were saying, because actually Takeshi was kind of saying he liked the phone that his parents had got him, then instead we could say even, put even in there and say, even if I had the chance, I wouldn't, for example, change it or upgrade it. So just throwing in some second conditional there. Nice way of showing off your language. How about third conditional? Well, third conditional is changing the past. So what happened in the past in this story? Takeshi's parents bought him a mobile phone. So we just imagine what would have happened if that hadn't happened. That's how the third conditional works. So with these part twos, because part two of IELTS, it often involves telling a story in the past because it's giving your experience about something. And so it's a good opportunity to use the third conditional to talk about how things could have been different. Just give me a second to smack Zoom over the head. Wonderful. I did used to have a pro subscription to Zoom, but they took away some features and then I stopped using it. And that's why I don't have pro Zoom anymore. It is quite expensive, you know. It's like £160 a year. Anyway. So third conditionals are great. It's a good structure to try to clam in part two, because part two is about these stories in the past. Very simply, the structure is, if that hadn't happened, I would have done something else. That's the structure. So if you want to learn this phrase simply as a phrase, it's, if that hadn't happened, I would have done something else. Whatever that thing is. If they hadn't bought me a phone, I would have bought one myself. Great. So, fantastic. That was a great part two to talk about. Now, we do have some questions about that. There's a question here from Alexander who says, why the chance, not a chance? Let's have a look here. Even if I had the chance, if I get the chance, if I have the chance, if I get the chance, do you think we'll get the chance? Yeah, interesting. It seems to be, Alexander, that the chance is a collocation that we use for conditionals in the future. I hope I get the chance. Yeah, it's just how we use it. I hope I get the chance. Because it's the chance to do some specific thing. Yeah. I hope I get the opportunity to get a new job. Yes, that's why it is. It's because when I say here the chance, I mean the chance to upgrade my phone. So here, when I say the chance, I'm actually talking about the specific chance that would allow me to do this imaginary situation that I'm considering. So that's why it's the chance and not just any chance, like a, of course, means one of many or any. But here we're talking about the specific chance to do this hypothetical thing. So very often with second conditionals, we'll talk about having the chance to do something, or with other forms of using the imaginary future. And that is represented in this phrase here. I hope I get the chance to do some specific thing. All right. So let's move on to Takeshi's part 3. How can I optimize this stream? Answers on a postcard. We're going to say language to improve, good language, and great things to use in future. Let me merge those cells. Great. All right, so this is part 3.
Like now it has become a part of our lives right now. It's kind of hard to live in like an obscure life because you kind of requires the technologies to do things for you. Okay, for example, if you want to pay like bills, you can do it directly from your phone. You don't need to go to a shop or a convenience store to pay. So it gives convenience, and that convenience becomes ordinary now. It might be a must in the future, but now it seems hard not to live with them. Yeah, for some people it really matters for them because they comes they comes in many like levels, right? Yeah, let's take phone as an example. There are like many type or tier of phones that you can buy, and some people might consider like a flagship phone, okay, like an iPhone or Samsung X24, okay, as their accessory and can show that they are wealthy. And yeah, they look cool using them. Okay. In my opinion, I would say not really. I think it has been like this for centuries, I guess. Like it's a human nature that we once we make something, there must be like several kinds of it, and with multiple level of range of prices, right? And of course, for example, the how would you call them? Like for the monarchy, they wouldn't use things like lower price. There must be something that display the extravagancy of that thing, showing that show your wealth, your status. If you happen to use just okay, let's come to the phone again. If you just use a phone, just a smartphone, like without any extra features, that would be kind of lame. I mean, it's the people as well. They might expect them to use something more, I mean, fancier to fit their ranks in the society. Kind of sad actually. I find it's not that necessary. I mean, when we judge people from their possessions, because it doesn't show that you're successful or not, you're wealthy or not. It's just things. Because okay, like a certain individual might value things differently. I might not care about phone that much, but when it comes to let's say like apartment, I might look for something fancier because I consider that having a full option apartment would kind of facilitate my life better. Yeah. For some, okay. The what? Come again, sorry. Oh my goodness. I don't think so because it's more like that's what we like encounter every day and kind of pass on from generation to generation, this kind of mentality. So it's kind of hard to be changed. But it's yeah, it is individual as well. It's not like everybody has to think in this way. Some might love to live in, like an obscure life, no bells and whistles, just minimal life. That could be a trend in the future, especially with this inflation. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, possibly. Like now it has been.
I remember before I heard another idiom, right? There was not my cup of tea, but I seem to have missed it here. Was that in part one, perhaps, that Takeshi used not my cup of tea? But I did hear it somewhere, so I'm going to write it here. All right. All right, so let's talk about this. Now, we can see that in part 3, we see a lot more of the kind of language we want to see. That's what always happens, and that's actually how the exam is designed. So part 1 is supposed to be kind of to relax the candidates a bit, talk about familiar topics, give information about your life. And then part 2 gives you the chance to tell a story a little bit and use some conditionals and so on. And then part 3, by that time, the candidates are normally more relaxed. And so we expect to see that higher language come out. And so we do expect this kind of thing in part 3, and it's what we've got. Again, there's a few minor issues here, but I didn't see any massive problems with the language that Takeshi was using. Rather, overall, in order for Takeshi to get a higher band in IELTS, what he needs is to attempt more complex structures. And that's not to say that there aren't some complex structures here. Let's take a look at some of the things that we have got. So we've got this, it seems hard not to live with them. That's a fairly complex verb-verb combination. So we have there the infinitive following seems, and it's all correct. That's showing to me a good deal of competence at an upper intermediate level. So when I see something like this, I'm thinking, okay, this person at least has a 6.5 in terms of their grammar knowledge, because they're hovering around a B2 in terms of their grammar structures. And then that's confirmed by this. We've got some present speculation with there must be, and then use of that again. Of course, using it the first time is more impactful than the second time. The first time, it's like, oh, that's great. The second time, it's like, oh, yeah, you can do that. Okay. But, you know, I heard that before. That's all right. But okay, you can use it again. Of course, if you start using it like 5 times, it's not like it's going to do you any favors. Really, we want to see a range of different structures. I thought this was a nice little phrase there that Takeshi kind of said to himself to keep the rhythm going. It's a good display of fluency in the language, that when you can't think of the right word, that some phrase comes out of your mouth like, how would you call it? Or what's that called again? How do you say that? Right, so that's a nice one. And I would put that into the fluency or the organization of speech, maintaining that rhythm of speech, which helps your communication in terms of the flow. Then we had 2 good examples of setting the topic, which was let's come to and when it comes to. These are both adverbial structures used to define the topic, and these would come, for IELTS, these would come under the idea of discourse markers. And if I can just read here, band 7 on the IELTS, it says, flexible use of spoken discourse markers, connectives and cohesive features. That's band 7 of IELTS for fluency and coherence. I think we have a strong case to make for a band 7 in fluency and coherence for Takeshi, given that we do see a flexible use of spoken discourse markers, less so with connectives, but we do also see cohesive features. This here, how would you call them? I'd call that a cohesive feature, because that is him linking his speech together, having a problem with fluency, not thinking of the right word, but keeping the flow going with this phrase. We also see lots of things like kind of and I mean. Now, if you were a public speaker or someone giving a presentation, you would receive the feedback to try to cut out those kinds of things. I think they're called fillers. But in a speaking exam, there's nothing wrong with them. They're actually a nice kind of natural way of padding out your speech. So we don't have a problem with things like kind of and I mean. To be honest with you, when I hear stuff like that, it tends to show someone who has a higher level of fluency, in fact. Facilitate. So I actually think that one of Takeshi's stronger areas that he demonstrated was vocabulary. And we'll come to that in a minute when I get to the end and I talk about the band descriptors in IELTS. Come again, sorry. Nice natural way of asking the examiner to repeat. That's what we, in culture, every day pass on. So the word order's a bit funky there. But again, there's some demonstration of fluency-based techniques that Takeshi's using to maintain a flow. And then we have a passive. Now, it's not a particularly impressive passive. It's kind of a present simple passive. It's hard to be changed. It's hard for them to change it or something like that. Actually, it's an infinitive passive, isn't it? But a passive nonetheless. And again, this is the kind of structure I would associate with a 6.57. So if someone's coming out with this, then I think, okay, so they've got their grammar up to somewhere around a 6.57. I know that you learn the passive much earlier than that, but being able to use it in a spoken exam in this way is something that we expect to see at a higher level. Just because you know the passive when you're a pre-intermediate student doesn't mean that you can actually use it flexibly like this. But Takeshi did. We had the idiom, which again goes to vocabulary. We had not my cup of tea, and we had especially with inflation, again, inflation, specific language. So let's have a bit of a look at some of these band descriptors and have a think about where Takeshi might be. Now, I don't currently work for IELTS, which means I can give my opinion about where I think Takeshi would be. If I were an active IELTS speaking examiner, you're not permitted to give band scores to students. You are not permitted to estimate students' band scores. That is actually against the contract that you need to sign with your speaking examination center. And IELTS would remove an active speaking examiner if they start going out and telling students what band scores they're going to get in the exam, because obviously there's a conflict of interest there. However, I can, because I'm not an active speaking examiner for IELTS. I do deliver active speaking exams currently for Ascentis, and that's the ESOL Skills for Life curriculum in the UK. Just before that, I was an active speaking examiner for Cambridge English. So if we take a look at Band 7 for fluency and coherence, I think we've got strong arguments to make there for Takeshi. Ability to keep going and readily produce long turns without noticeable effort. I think in part 1 there was noticeable effort, but I think that effort we could see as we went to part 2 and part 3. We could see a much clearer demonstration of that for a band 7. Some hesitation, repetition, or self-correction may occur, often mid-sentence. Well, we see a lot of that, don't we? If we go up here, we can see this kind of mid-sentence struggling that went on. No problem. We expect to see that with the band 7. And then flexible use of spoken discourse markers, connectives, and cohesive features. That's an area which I think Takeshi did quite well. Could do even better. But that was a strength. So that's great. All right, let's move on to lexical resource. Lexical resource is basically vocabulary. Resource flexibly used to discuss a variety of topics. I think we're just about there with that. There was quite a lot of nice vocabulary displayed, although at times we could see that Takeshi wanted to say things and didn't quite have the words to say it. Some ability to use less common and idiomatic items, and awareness of style and collocation. Yes, we do have an awareness of style. We do have examples of collocation, and we definitely have ability to use less common and idiomatic items. There's some of those written here. No bells and whistles. And it was used correctly as well. That's the thing about idioms. You don't want to just go around learning loads of idioms. You need to learn the idioms in context and learn how to use them appropriately in context. If you just learn the meaning of no bells and whistles and then start using it all the time, it's not going to sound right because it's quite a specific idiom. That's what I always caution about learning idioms. You don't want to go out, learn 1,000 idioms and think that's going to get me a band 9 in IELTS. It's not how it works. But what we have here is someone who's comfortable using this idiom because he is familiar with how it's used. And we've got some other language in there which also demonstrates that. So I think we have a strong argument to make for a band 7 in lexical resource as well. Moving on to grammar range. So this is what it says for band 7 grammar range. It says a range of structures flexibly used, error-free sentences are frequent. Both simple and complex sentences are used effectively despite some errors. A few basic errors persist. So here I think we're borderline, and I might be tempted to give Takeshi a 6.5 in this area. The reason being that I would have liked to have seen a bit more complexity. So I would like to see some complex sentences attempted, a bit more complexity attempted. I understand that Takeshi being the first person to jump on and speak live on the stream is a difficult thing to do, and therefore I'm sure that he can perform a lot better the next time when he feels less nervous about it. But one of the things to think about next time would be to try and show off a little bit with his grammar in order to push that score a little bit higher. So we're going to say 6.5 for grammar. And then finally, pronunciation. I would say that his pronunciation is a bit of a strength. We did have an example of mispronunciation, but it was infrequent. The mispronunciation was this one. I think we heard levels rather than levels. Not something I'm particularly worried about. The band 8 descriptor for pronunciation says, uses a wide range of phonological features to convey precise or subtle meaning. I don't think we quite had that, but I think we're getting there. Can sustain appropriate rhythm, flexible use of stress and intonation across long utterances. I think we did see a flexible use of especially intonation. Can be easily understood throughout. I think Takeshi was easy to understand. What do you think? And then accent has minimal effect on intelligibility. I think that's the case. So for pronunciation, I'm giving Takeshi a 7.5. So overall, we're going to go 7, 7, 6.5, 7.5. That's what I would give you, Takeshi. So does anyone have any questions, follow-ups, or comments based on that? And then after this, we will give someone else a chance to jump on and do that. And thank you again, Takeshi, for your work there. It was absolutely fantastic. I see we've got Pallavi joining. Hello, Pallavi. How are you doing? We are talking about IELTS today. Patu says, are you doing live IELTS? Yes, I am. And you can tell it's the first time that I'm doing it because everything's all over the place. But we did have the very courageous Takeshi jumping on and giving us a good example of how to get a strong score in speaking in IELTS. Sleepwalker says, should we correct our mistakes while speaking or just continue speaking? There's a balance, Sleepwalker. And actually, I thought Takeshi was very good at coping with that balance. We saw some pausing and some going back, but not a massive amount of it. You don't want to be too self-conscious in the exam. Actually, if we consider your strategy for the speaking exam, then Obviously, it does depend on your strengths and weaknesses as a student, right? And I'll give you an example for Manuel Gordillo, who has amazing fluency. So I'll give you a specific example for him in a moment. But let's say the general student, so the average student. So in my experience, the average student worries too much about mistakes, overuses idioms to attempt to impress without understanding the context of how to really use them. Google Docs absolutely drives me crazy sometimes. So the average student worries too much about mistakes, overuses idioms to attempt to impress without understanding the context of how to improve them, overthinks the language in a word-to-word way. In other words, tries to grammarize their language word by word. So overall, what we have here is someone who focuses a bit too much on accuracy. I'm not saying that accuracy isn't important. It is, as you can see here, as I struggle desperately with this cursed software in order to make it appear the way I want it to. So if we're to talk about priorities for the average student in the speaking exam, then I would say fluency is king. Who made this? I'm going to stop using this software, honestly. Look. Maybe it's time to go back to Microsoft Word. Bill Gates, all is forgiven. Fluency is king. So focus on fluency. Focus on completing the task. Don't deviate too much. Ensure that you attempt complex structures. Remember that the way that it's worded, you get rewarded more for attempting and failing complex structures than not attempting them at all. If you don't attempt complex grammar structures, then you can't get a higher band in the grammar descriptor of the IELTS. So you need to attempt them. So you must push yourself to attempt them. So that's priorities for the average student. For Manuel, I would change that a little bit. And we'd make it much more accuracy focused because I know that he has fluency as king already. So what I want with him is to wind it down and be clear. And that is, I believe, what he did in his speaking exam, which is why he passed. There was another question before, which I found quite interesting. Let me see if I can find it. That's it. Fluent English with Me said, what are the bad attitudes that IELTS examiners don't like? Maybe talking too much or exaggerating something or something like that. This is real. This really is something important to think about. Do not come in with a bad attitude towards the exam material. So I know that part 2 is it's a tough part of the exam, because you can get something, you have to talk about something, and maybe you have no experience with that whatsoever. Nevertheless, don't display that. So don't look at the card and be like, oh no, what's this? I can't talk about this. It's a weird thing, but as humans, the examiners get kind of attached a little bit to the exam that they're delivering. So even if they agree with you, they're likely not to take it in a good way if you start complaining about the exam materials. People really do this, by the way. It really does happen in the exam. So just maintain a nice positive attitude towards the exam. In general, treat the examiner as a human, right? So the examiner is not a robot. The examiner will judge you as a human, whether they want to or not. So there's going to be some subconsciousness involved here. If you're acting like a nice person, if you're acting like a nice person, then it will, or it may at least, have an effect on your mark. I know that seems weird. It shouldn't, but examiners are humans, and an examiner will normally grade between 10 and 16 candidates in one day. So everyone kind of blends into one, right? And you're having to mark all this language. Now, if you remember that someone was not particularly a nice person, was perhaps a little bit too, someone kind of waltzes in, they're like, yeah, whatever. Give me the exam, let's go. Yeah, okay, no problem. That sort of arrogant attitude, that could make the difference between getting a 7.5 and a 7. I know it shouldn't, but the examiners are humans, and it can. Let's be realistic. It can. I've seen it happen, really. I've seen it happen. In Cambridge English, we have a pair of examiners. So it's like me and another examiner, and we have to discuss the grades. And the amount of times that the examiner will say something like, actually, we're not supposed to discuss the grades, but it happens. And the amount of times the other examiner says, like, what was up with their attitude? Or something like that, right? And that's going in their head, subconsciously at least. So it's a real thing. So don't be too arrogant, laid back, okay? I'm not saying don't be relaxed. Relaxed is good, but you still want to show that you're being respectful to the exam. I mean, if you think about this more in human terms, this examiner, this is someone who has gone through the interview process to become a speaking examiner for that exam. They've done the training, which is fairly extensive. They do the regular calibrations. So they're quite invested in the exam. They have loyalty to the exam. And so you should come also with some positive and respectful attitude about that, because they are going to react to that, whether consciously or subconsciously. Let's see what other questions we have. Can you explain a bit of 10 times out of 10? People don't normally say 10 times out of 10. They say 9 times out of 10. And 9 times out of 10 just basically means most of the time, or almost all of the time. So like 9 times out of 10, when you do this, this happens. I don't really hear people use the phrase 10 times out of 10, but 10 times out of 10 would mean always. There are people in the waiting room, Takeshi, but I want to speak to people one-to-one, otherwise it will just be a cacophony of noise. I wouldn't worry too much about first impressions, and the reason I say that is because in my experience, candidates put too much effort into their first impression. So you get some people who come in and they're like, hello, nice to meet you, and they're like holding their hand out to shake hands. Let's take it down a notch, all right? Just be respectful and polite. That's okay, right? The other thing you get is, hello, my name's Richard Nolan, and your name is? And you say, hello, I am Jose. I'm from a small town on the southeast coast of Spain. It's called Benicassim. It is a small fishing town, and it has become popular in the recent years. You know, it's like, okay, all right, Jose, I just asked your name, buddy. That's all right. Yeah, so you get stuff like that sometimes as well. So just be polite and respectful. That's okay. And by the way, if you do get nervous and start doing that, don't worry, that won't be held against you either. It's just funny. Because people get nervous and they do it. It's like, okay, that's great, You just kind of smile and say thank you and move on. By the way, I have seen very, very, very nervous people do very well in these exams. So if you do get nervous, don't worry. I remember there was this one girl who came in to the exam and she was like physically shaking, like just in her whole body pretty much is shaking. And she's like, I'm sorry for my English. I'm so nervous. I'm really sorry for my English. and she was really good. She was really good. She got a very good, she passed the advanced. It was the Cambridge Advanced. Because she had the language and it came out, even though she was like stuttering and stammering and having problems with fluency. But we heard all kinds of fancy language come out, So if you do get nervous, it's all right. Don't worry. Just show the language that you can. Right, so I think it's probably about time that we try this again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab myself a coffee. If you'd like to do some IELTS practice, get ready to jump into Zoom. The link is in the chat. The link will be in the chat. Please make sure in Zoom that your name is the same as on stream. So I'll be back in just a few minutes. I'm going to get myself a coffee. Hello, hello. Hello, hello, folks. I am back. Yes, there's a few people in the waiting room, Patu. At the moment, I'm seeing if Alexander has a microphone and can talk. You might need to mute the stream, Alexander, so you don't have two audio things coming through.
Hello.
Hello, Alexander. How are you doing?
As good as can be. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. As good as can be. That's another answer. That's another good answer. You guys have got good answers to the how are you question. All right, fantastic. Let's get into some part one questions, Alexander. Shall I call you Alexander or Alex? What do you prefer?
Alexander is better because after TV series Morning Show, I found that Alex could be a woman name as well.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. Although normally when we use Alex as a woman's name, it's spelt with an I, so it's normally like this. That's not always the case, but in English, that's how we do it. All right, so let's talk about free time, Alexander. Do you have a lot of free time?
Oh yes, recently yes. Fortunately or unfortunately, I do have a lot of free times.
Do you spend your free time outside?
Well, during the summer period, I have the chance to make some gardening because I have a small land nearby my detached house, which I have to make clean and have to keep in order. Therefore, morning time especially and afternoon, I try to spend outside. Besides, to get some vitamin D from the sun, which we have here, fortunately.
Is there a free time activity that you would like to try in the future?
Well, just recently I was a fan of walking in so-called Scandic walking style, but after some, let's say, damage of my leg, I now take a break of this. So I would like to return it back and to revitalize, to let's say, renew it again, because it's a must for my health and for my fitness condition, I think, and it looks to be the best way to keep fitness level.
All right, thank you, Alexander. Let's jump into a part two question. So I'm going to give you a task here. I'd like you to describe a special event or festival that you liked. You should say what the event was, where it happened, what happened, and say why you liked it. You will have to talk about the topic for 1 to 2 minutes, and you have about a minute to think about what you're gonna say. You can make some notes if you wish, okay?
Okay, let me be prepared for 1 minute. 1 minute, right? Okay.
All right then, Alexander, are you ready?
Yes, certainly. So the event which comes to my mind is a consumer electronics show in Las Vegas, which I had a privilege to visit several times. So first of all, it's a very interesting city, which very famous for its entertainment atmosphere and a lot of possibilities to enjoy nice shows around the city. And the event itself is the biggest worldwide electronics equipment show, consumer electronics, where I was able to see the best possible current and future samples of electronics equipment, which we can purchase, can use, or can dream of. And generally, it's a very good time. It's January, so it's not hot, not cold, because it's a good position in the center of desert. And very nice time for shopping, a lot of shops around inside the city, and a lot of shows, concerts, and games. I was not fortunate to watch boxing or MMA, but I hope next time it will be chance to watch boxing as well, which I'm big fan. So if I have the chance to spend January 1 year, where I'll be very happy. And strongly recommend everybody to visit Las Vegas in winter time, especially. Is it enough?
All right, thank you. Very good. Well, that just to give you an insight into the timing, that was just about 2 minutes, so it was. I was just waiting because I'm not sure if I caught whether you said why you liked it. As in what you liked about the event in particular.
Generally, I like because of atmosphere of freedom, entertainment, and happiness around the city. So it looks like nobody cares about problems.
All right.
Enjoying their life.
Yeah. All right. Just give me a moment. I'm just going to save that audio as part 2, and then we'll move on to some part 3 questions. We won't do a full part 3, but we'll just do a few to continue. So you've been talking about events and festivals that you liked. Why do you think celebrations are important in society?
Well, let me think a bit. I think especially nowadays, it's crucial to have celebration to create positive mood, positive atmosphere in our wild world. And from it's one aspect. Second aspect, all nations should have some events to be united, regardless of their vision, political views, etc., and some problems which we face every day. Some good events and celebrations can create possibility to mitigate all possible problems and to make people like one nation, I think.
Do you think celebrations are experienced differently by different generations?
Of course, yes. Speaking apart from the religious celebrations, which at least, but even for religious celebrations in Russia, in Soviet Union, we had chance to live, we have different possibilities to celebrate. And recently it's more and more open and, let's say, more official. Before it was even prohibited, in some Soviet time. But general celebration different in terms of importance of each event. So, for example, if some nation never won a World Cup, we never witnessed such celebration, right? So we cannot compare. But I think as soon as anybody win it, celebration will be same, regardless of year or century. Whole city will be full of, and we will be all happy. So regardless of time, period of year. Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Alexander. So I'm going to stop you there, and I will go over the recording in a moment. I just want to give another viewer from the stream a chance to have a go at that. But thank you very much for your contributions, and we'll go over those in just a moment.
Thank you.
All right, cheers, Alexander. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
See you later. All right, great. So I think what we'll do is we'll go into another bit of IELTS. We'll give someone another chance to have a go at that, and then we'll go through those recordings together and see where that takes us. So Patu, I think you've been waiting for a while. I see that you're in the chat twice, though. I don't know which of these. It seems like you're waiting twice in the waiting room, so I don't know which of these I should use. There's one with a capital P and one with a small p. Shall I try one of these? Let's try this one. Okay, nothing happening there. Let's. Oh, hello. Zero microphone. Shall I try the other one, Patu? I'll try your other. Oh, we have a microphone. Hello? Hello, Patu?
Hello, sir.
Hello, Patu. How are you doing?
Hello, sir. Hello. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir. Sir, I'm doing great, sir.
Maybe your other device will be better. This one, the microphone
Hello,
doesn't sound brilliant. Also, I think you're listening to me from the stream rather than from your mobile phone. Shall we try the other device, Patu? Let's try the other one. Also, I would recommend you mute the stream and then listen to me through Zoom. Because actually the stream is delayed by about 3 or 4 seconds. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Oh, that's good. That's very clear.
Okay, sir.
All right, fantastic. All right then, Patu. So let's have a chat about some IELTS stuff. We'll start with some part 1 questions. Tell tell me about your hometown. You don't need to say the name because I realize we're on the internet now, so you probably don't want to say the name of your hometown, but tell me, is it big, is it small, and what's interesting about it?
Okay, sir. My hometown is very small, and it is in the middle of my country, Nepal. And there is also a jungle near it. So atmosphere is very good. There is no hot and cold. Yeah, it is very good.
Would you say that it's a good place to live?
Yes, I think it is good place to live here because there is no higher temperature. Let's say 49 degrees C. I think the temperature is around 30 degrees centigrade in summertime. So, and also there are a lot of facilities. So it is, yeah, good place to live here.
All right, fantastic. What kind of jobs do people in your town do?
Well, actually, there are a lot of people who are on job, and many people choose a job, for example, in a manufacturing company. For example, I also do job in a food company where it produces noodles. So, yes, apart from these, there are many women who are also like to do job in banking sector. So yeah, people have different tastes and they do different jobs. Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. So we're going to move on to part 2. In this part of the test, I'm going to give you a topic to talk about. So your topic is, I'd like you to describe a piece of advice you recently received. You should say when this happened, who gave you the advice, what the advice was, and explain how you felt about the advice. You need to speak for 1 to 2 minutes, and you have about 1 minute to prepare what you want to say. You can make notes if you wish. You have about 1 minute now to prepare what you want to say, okay?
Okay, sir.
And while we just wait for Takeshi to prepare there, I would encourage anyone who's considering to take IELTS to just go through how they would answer a question like this. The part 2 on the IELTS speaking is very much a task which you can get better at over time. It's one of those tasks that if you practice it, you start to become much better at coming up with things to say. And as I said before, because it often involves talking in the past, it's a great opportunity of using a variety of grammar tenses. And the one that I particularly spoke about previously was that third conditional. All right then, Patu, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, a piece of advice that I recently received from a customer, because I work in a manufacturing company, and I produce cartoon CB boxes, which is used for packaging material of any food items. Recently, 1 month ago, a customer complained me about the quality of the cartoon. Especially, there was something wrong in size, dimension, we call, because it was difficult to wrap their products in that cartoon, and the customer complained us to just make good shape or good size so that it can fit their products, and we accordingly made our teams to solve these problems, and we solved this because it affects our business, our company's reputation, and also the dissatisfied customer goes or switch our product to other product. So keeping in mind that we change a lot of things in our product so that they can receive good quality of product. And the advice that I received from customer was very good, because it was opportunity for me to resolve all the issues in that cartoon. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Do you think it's important for people to ask for advice when they need it?
Yes, I think it is very necessary. There are a lot of reasons when people want to give advice from others. For example, I am learning English language, but I obviously need a lot of advices from different teachers, not one teacher, because all teachers have different styles of giving good stuffs. So, and another example we can take that in today's world, many people are suffering from stress. So people go to the psychologist to give advice about how their mind can be good. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons to get advice from other people's.
How do you think the internet has changed the way people give and receive advice?
Well, in today's world, there is a technology, and it is easy for many peoples to get advice from different experts. For example, people can get advice from a marriage counselor if there is a problem between husbands and wives. So there are a lot of reasons. Yeah, and the technology helped a lot, because we do not go from one place to another to talk with the experts about giving advice. We can just open Skype or any Facebook, and we can take advice from experts. So technology has given a very comfortable in this case.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Patu, for joining us today.
Sir, one thing I want to say, sir.
Go ahead.
Can I? Okay, sir, this is my first time, and I've never used any stream to talk about IELTS. So, yeah, and you have given me such opportunity. I'm very grateful that you gave me, and also I have read schooling which is very public, conservative public, no, and there is no English teacher. So I developed myself, and today I am here to talk with you. And this is great opportunity for me because yeah, I have very problem, but you gave me so opportunity. I'm very thankful, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Patu. That's lovely to hear, actually, and I'm happy that I can help in that way. Considering what you said about your English, I think your English is very good for that. And we'll go through some of the things that you spoke about in just a moment. So thank you, Patu.
Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to reset Zoom because that's how it works. All right. Fantastic. So let's have a look at some of these. We'll start by going through Alexander's, and then we'll go through Patu's. Thank you very much to both of you there for contributing to that. I don't know if we'll have time to do another one of these today, especially because I like to spend a lot of time on correction. You see, this is the thing about correction, you know, error correction often, it's very difficult to make error correction useful. One type of error correction that's really not useful is when someone just says, don't say that, say this, don't say that, say this, as you're speaking. But if we're going to make error correction useful, we need to engage as much as possible with feedback. Actually, we shouldn't say error correction, but instead we should say feedback, because we're talking about positives. We're talking about things you could say better, and then we're talking about some things which maybe didn't go so great, but weren't necessarily massive problems. So we'll start with Alexander. Just get that recording up. And just remember, there's Alexander. Remember what I said about part one of IELTS. Part one is really designed to be the part of the exam that kind of relaxes the candidate a little bit and kind of gets your mind into the zone of talking English. That's why part one focuses on giving information, which is a task that most people are quite familiar with in speaking another language. And by the way, if you've been watching this long, we're already coming up to 2 hours, then make sure that you do, of course, smash that like button and hit subscribe. And if you'd like to see more streams like this, where we have live interaction, audio, and we go through the corrections, then please do comment down below. I'm receptive to any feedback. It's very useful if a number of people give specific feedback so I can start to get an idea of which parts of a learning stream like this are most useful and most wanted by the audience. Did you hear that passive? They are most wanted by the audience. When you start doing IELTS stuff, you get super focused on the structures. And unfortunately, that is how exams always tend to be. They're always going to be focused more on structure than real life, because real life communication is really, it's a lot about meaning. But when we come to exams, we always have to talk about structure, also called form, also called grammar. So let's have a listen to Alexander's part one.
Oh, yes, recently, yes. Fortunately or unfortunately, I do have a lot of free times. Well, during the summer period, I have the chance to make some gardening, because I have a small land nearby my detached house, which I have to make clean and have to keep in order. Therefore, morning time especially and afternoon, I try to spend outside, besides to get some vitamin D from the sun, which we have here, fortunately. Well, just recently I was a fan of walking in so-called Scandic walking style, but after some, let's say, damage of my leg, I now take a break of this. So I would like to return it back and to revitalize, to let's say, renew it again, because it's a must for my health and for my fitness condition, I think, and it looks to be the best way to keep fitness level.
Is this a part of the recording where I'm talking significantly, which probably means that we're going on to part 2. So let's pause for a moment and have a look at Alexander's part 1 here. So a few minor corrections for you, Alexander. What I can see is we have a lot of kind of minor problems with collocations. There's no easy way of fixing things like this up, because we see this kind of throughout Alexander's exam, these kind of small mistakes here and there. It's just a process of, over time, you correct them, fix them, learn more collocations. I would say this is likely to be something that comes from originally being someone who learns sort of word-to-word translation style when talking, and now is coming into learning more collocations. And so that's what needs to happen in order to fix this. It is a process, and it's not something to worry about in terms of communication, because in terms of communication, when I say keep fitness, no problem. Like, I understand that. But in terms of good collocations and accuracy and exams, keep fitness is not ideal. Instead, we should say keep fit. And that would have made a very good sentence there with the best way to keep fit. Make some gardening. So we don't make gardening, we do it. There's no easy way of determining when to use do and make, because you have all these expressions like make a mistake and do this and make that. However, in general, the idea is that make is to create and do is just any action. That's the general idea. It doesn't always work, but in general, that's the idea. So gardening is an action. We're not creating a garden. However, if you do create a garden, then you could make it. For example, make a Zen garden. I want to make a Zen garden. You know, Zen garden's like a small sand with some rocks, and it's very Zen. It's a Japanese idea. In this case, we wanted to say do some gardening. And then we had just recently I was. So just recently doesn't go together very well with I was, particularly when you were then saying that you had an injury and so couldn't continue. I think with that, we could have an improvement where we said, I had been getting interested in... It was a special type of walking, wasn't it? To be honest with you, I didn't catch it. I didn't catch quite what you said, like scant walking or something like that. It sounds like a specific type of walking. By the way, when you use a specific term like that, it's a good opportunity to say like, oh, I'm doing like this walking, which is a trend these days, and explain what it is, because it might not be something the examiner knows. And in this case, I think it's something I don't know. I imagine Alexander will type in the chat the kind of Scandic, right? Yeah, I've never heard of it. However, it sounded like a real thing. So I thought, oh, that's not an English mistake. That's a real thing, but I don't know what it is. So it's a good opportunity to explain what it is. Oh, I'm doing Scandinavic walking, which is like power walking, or I don't know what it is, but you could explain it. So I have been getting interested in Scandinavic walking. However, just recently, I got a minor injury, which has meant I've had to stop. Look at that. Wow. See, saying something like that would obviously be fantastic. I mean, not only is it a very complex sentence, but we've got a past perfect passive, past perfect continuous passive. No, is that continuous? Because of get, you could see it like a passive. But anyway, let's call it past perfect continuous. And if you consider this get form to be the passive, we could say it's also a passive. And then we have just recently I got, so we got the past simple. So past simple contrasted with past perfect continuous. And then we've got a nice little relative clause on the end, which has meant I've had to stop. And that's got our present perfect in there. So just have a think about those structures and how to get those things together. The main point, though, was using just recently, because just recently is a nice adverb for time, but it doesn't go very well with past simple. Just recently is more of a present perfect tense. That said, I did actually use just recently with past simple there, in contrast to the past perfect, where it works a bit better, because then it's saying, well, something happened in the past, but then just recently, in the very recent past, this happened. All right, brilliant. So that's Alexander's part 1. That's a good start. Let's move on to part 2 and see what we get there.
Yes, certainly. So the event which comes to my mind is a Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, which I had a privilege to visit several times. So first of all, it's a very interesting city, which very famous for its entertainment atmosphere and a lot of possibilities to enjoy nice shows around the city. And the event itself is the biggest worldwide electronics equipment show consumer.
Just going to go back a second.
And the event itself is the biggest world entertainment atmosphere and a lot of possibilities to enjoy nice shows around the city. Oh. And the event itself is the biggest worldwide electronics equipment show, consumer electronics, where I was able to see the best possible current and future samples of electronics equipment, which we can purchase, can use, or can dream of. And generally, it's a very good time. It's January, so it's not hot, not cold, because it's a good position in the center of desert. And very nice time for shopping, a lot of shops around inside the city, and a lot of shows, concerts, and games. I was not fortunate to watch boxing or MMA, but I hope next time it will be chance to watch boxing as well, which I'm big fan of. So if I have the chance to spend January 1 year where, I'll be very happy. And strongly recommend everybody to visit Las Vegas in winter time, especially. Is it enough?
All right, great. Yeah, that was enough time, Alexander. The reason I held off is that there was part of the task I don't think you addressed, which was talking about what you particularly enjoyed about it. Now, you mentioned a lot of positive things, and you also said what you didn't have a chance to do, and you said you would do it again. But it'd be nice to just have that explicit. The things I enjoyed the most were ding, 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 right? Just to make sure that you get that task completion going on. Now, task completion is not the focus, especially in IELTS, which actually doesn't have a separate speaking descriptor for task completion. Nonetheless, it is good to tick that box because it's sort of the minimum framework of what you want to do to show that you're being a good communicator. So particularly in part 2, where you have normally 4 points to address on the little card, then you want to tick that box and make sure you explicitly go through those things. We got some great language here, though. We got some great complex language, a few minor issues here and there, but the event which comes to mind, that's complex. The biggest worldwide electronic equipment show. That's quite a mouthful, but sounds very good. Sounds very good with a stream of well-collocated adjectives. So we're quite happy about that. I'm not sure quite where that came. Maybe that was a note you made when you were making your notes, but it's a nice bit of lexis, that is vocabulary. I was not fortunate to watch boxing. Would be better if you had your enough in here. I was not fortunate enough to watch boxing. That's kind of the more correct structure there. And if I had the chance to spend January there, I'd be happy. Well done for remembering that. I know it sometimes feels a little bit synthetic to put in this second conditional in the middle of nowhere, but it sounded very good actually, and you did it right. Your pronunciation was a little bit unclear with the second bit with I'd be happy, but I'm being charitable here and saying, yeah, it's all right. Just be careful not to, especially when you're coming out with the fancy grammar structures, because the examiner's ear will pick up and he'll be listening. Is he going to use the correct forms for this? So that's when you want to enunciate quite well so that the examiner can go, yes, this person knows how to use the second conditional. And then we had a lot of possibilities to enjoy nice shows around the city. There's nothing wrong with that, but I thought that this was a good candidate for a sentence that we could upgrade a little bit there. So a lot of possibilities to enjoy nice shows around the city. Possibilities doesn't quite sound like the right word. The word possibility is quite a general word, isn't it? And I feel like something like opportunities would sound better. Also, I think we should have a there are. So there are a lot of opportunities to, and then you've said enjoy nice shows around the city. Let's use some sort of phrasal verb here instead of enjoy. Like go out and see all kinds of really nice shows around the city. All right. So just a little example of how to push your language a little bit higher. As I said, there's nothing wrong with that sentence, but we want to lift it up a little bit. All right. All right, and let's move on to Alexander part 3.
Well, let me think a bit. I think especially nowadays, it's crucial to have celebration to create positive mood, positive atmosphere in our wild world. And it's one aspect. Second aspect, all nations should have some events to be united, regardless of vision, political views, etc., and some problems which we face every day. Some good events and celebrations can create possibility to smooth, mitigate all possible problems and to make people like one nation, I think. Let's say. Of course, yes. Speaking apart from the religious celebrations, which at least, but even for religious celebrations in Russia, in Soviet Union, we had chance to live. We had different possibilities to celebrate, and recently it's more and more open and, let's say, more official. Before it was even prohibited, in some Soviet time. But general celebration different in terms of importance of each event. So for example, if some nation never won a World Cup, we never witnessed such celebration, right? So we cannot compare. But I think as soon as anybody win it, celebration will be same, regardless of year or century. Whole city will be full of, and they will be all happy. So regardless of time, period of year. Yeah.
All right, so as usual, part 3 allows for some good language to come out. So we did have arguably a passive. I'm not sure if it was intended in that way, but we could argue that it was prohibited is a passive, because prohibit as an active verb will be they prohibited it. Mitigate possible problems is a very strong collocation, and the word mitigate in general is higher vocabulary. So we definitely have evidence from Alexander of vocabulary. Decent vocabulary. I think that's one of the things that Alexander evidenced best, actually. Regardless of your vision, political views, etc. We have not witnessed such a thing, so we can't compare. Great. Would it be nice to see a few more grammar structures? We did have the second conditional. That's the one that stands out in my mind. And then we had this sort of issue here. Again, just a minor thing. As I mentioned in part 1, there were a few minor errors. And we have the minor thing here with 4 and 2. So this is something that students really struggle with, which is giving or explaining. What could we say it is? We could call it explaining purpose, or giving reason using preposition. And the temptation always is to use for, but most of the time in English we use to, particularly after adjectives as used here. After an adjective, which is important, it's basically always to, and then the verb. If we use for in this case, actually, we're normally talking about the person that this relates to. So it's important for this person. Like it's important for him. But for actually explaining the purpose, reason, or so on, we tend to use to. And that's the same also when we're not using adjectives and we're just talking about purpose in general. Like I work to earn money. I eat to live. That sort of thing. General use in English is using to. You can use for, but it's the rarer one, it's the more difficult one, and I would encourage you to come away from that and use to as your default. All right. All right, thank you very much for that, Alexander. I'm going to move on now to Patu's test. So we're going to go on to Patu.
Very small, and
so this is Patu talking about his hometown in part 1.
it is in the middle of my country, Nepal. And there is also a jungle near it. So atmosphere is very good. There is no hot and cold. Yeah, it is very good. Yes, I think it is good place to live here because there is no higher temperature. Let's say 49 degrees C. I think the temperature is around 30 degrees centigrade in summertime. So, and also there are a lot of facilities. So it is yeah, good place to live here. Well, actually, there are a lot of people who are on job, and many people choose a job, for example, in a manufacturing company. For example, I also do job in a food company where it produces noodles. So yes, apart from these, there are many women who are also like to do job in banking sector. So yeah, people have different tastes and they do different jobs. Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, a piece of advice that I recently received from a customer, because I work in a manufacturing company, and I produce like cartoon CB boxes, which is used for packaging material of any food items. Recently, 1 month ago, a customer complained me about the quality of the cartoon. Especially, there was something wrong in size, dimension, we call, because it was difficult to wrap their products in that cartoon, and the customer complained us to just make good shape or good size so that it can fit their products, and we accordingly made our teams to solve these problems, and we solve this because it affects our business, our company's reputation, and also the dissatisfied customer goes or switch our product to other product. So keeping in mind that we change a lot of things in our product so that they can receive good quality of product. And the advice that I received from customer was very good, and because it was opportunity for me to resolve all the issues in that cartoon. Yeah.
Let's pause for a moment because I think we're about to go into part 3 there with Patu. So let's talk a little bit about that. So there's some minor things here. We've got some small minor words getting dropped here and there. The article, the atmosphere, it's a good place to live. So the article in both cases there. So maybe something to have a look at articles there, Patu. Were it producing noodles? So an attempt there at a relative clause, which doesn't quite work. So the best way of doing this is probably where we make noodles. You could make it passive and say where noodles are made, but where we make noodles would be okay as well. There are many humans who... I would avoid using humans as a synonym of people. If you use humans, you're talking in a very kind of biological, scientific sense, which doesn't quite sound right in this context. The use of the preposition to after complain would make that sound a bit better. So we do have some evidence of just, minor words missing here and there. It's not actually a big problem for communication, so don't worry about it for communication. But on IELTS, the examiner would pick up on that. And then pronunciation, the only sort of pronunciation thing that I picked up on really was this temperate ch. And we want to say ch, temperate ch. Minor issue, to be honest, but for your information, temperate ch. And actually, very often when you have this at the end of words, this suffix of T-U-R-E, then the pronunciation is ch. Ch, 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 ch. Temperate ch. Not temperate sh. Temperate ch. Like church. All right? And some good stuff. Many people choose a job in the manufacturing company. A piece of advice... was nice. A piece of advice that I recently received because I work, and it looks like I've missed something there. I work in a manufacturing company, and yes, it was difficult to wrap. So there we have an example of the structure that Alexander used before, and that's the correct use of it. Pallavi with a picture of feet on Avatar, asking if I'm going to finish soon. Yeah, probably, Pallavi. I'll probably finish, I don't know, in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something. The dissatisfied customer. Okay, nice collocation about customers. A dissatisfied or a satisfied customer could be a better one. A reasonable quality of product. That's a really nice collocation with reasonable quality is nice. And of product sounds good. Even without of, a reasonable quality product also sounds good. Bear in mind, of course, reasonable is, that's decent. But then also we've got high quality of product. The advice I received was, cleft sentence. Nice one. Rather than I had received some advice, we've got the advice I received was, boom, boom, boom. Okay, great. So I wanted to mention about carton, because of course carton, yeah, okay, that's could be the correct vocabulary for it. A carton is a type of box. We, in the UK in particular, we often think of these things for carton, something like that, or perhaps this one here, but less so this one. In the UK, we tend to call this a cardboard box, just so you know. Now, I wouldn't encourage you necessarily to change that, but perhaps to have a wider range of vocabulary in this area, especially since it is your area of work. So you might want to just look at some other ways of talking about packaging, carton, cardboard, boxes. And just getting used to the little nuances and differences between that different vocabulary. All right. Let's move on to our part 3 from Patu. Then we're going to wrap up. Damn it. All right.
Necessary. There are a lot of reasons when people want to give advice from others. For example, I am learning English language, but I obviously need a lot of advices from different teachers, not one teacher, because all teachers have different.
Hang on, we got some good stuff here.
A lot of reasons when people want to give advice from others. For example, I am learning English language, but I obviously need a lot of advices from different teachers, not one teacher, because all teachers have different styles of giving good stuffs. So, and another example we can take that in today's world, many people are suffering from stress. So people go to the psychologist to give advice about how their mind can be good. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons to get advice from other people's. Well, in today's world, there is a technology, and it is easy for many people to get advice from different experts. For example, people can get advice from a marriage counselor if there is a problem between husbands and wives. So there are a lot of reasons. Yeah, and the technology helped a lot because we do not go from one place to another to talk with the experts about giving advice. We can just open Skype or any Facebook, and we can take advice from experts. So technology has given a very comfortable in this case. Sir, one thing I want to say, sir. Can I? Okay, sir, this is.
All right, thank you very much, Patu. I just want to make a comment there that for Alexander and Patu, they only got one question in part 3. So that's why we have less demonstration of language. With Takeshi at the start, we did like a full exam to full time. So obviously there was a bit more language coming out there in part 3 for Takeshi because Takeshi had a longer amount of time. So let's talk about some of the things that Patu said here. There are a lot of reasons. There are a lot of reasons when people want to give advice. People can get advice from, go from one place to another, nice collocation. And then we do see here a bit of grammar that might be worth focusing on for Patu, which is the use of uncountable nouns in plural forms. So you might want to take a look at that, Patu, just have a look at those, especially the common ones like advice, people, stuff, information, and just get used to using those uncountable nouns. So when we use an uncountable noun, it means some quantity, but we always use it in a singular form, and the grammar is singular as well. Technology has given a very comfortable in this case. So there's something definitely missing from that sentence. It's not entirely clear what is missing from that sentence, but something is missing from it. Because I'm not entirely certain what you're saying there. Maybe you're saying that technology has made things more comfortable, made things easier, more accessible. But that one doesn't quite make sense. I'm highlighting that one because it's an error which causes misunderstanding. It's not just a minor error where I can assume what you mean. But actually with this one, I don't quite know what you mean. So that's something to look out for. And I want to talk about this. So all teachers have different styles of giving some good stuff. Great. I love the word stuff, but here I feel like it's a little bit too generic, and I feel like in general this sentence needs to be a little bit more specific. All right, so we could expand a little bit, something like that. We're no longer talking about good stuff, but every teacher has a different way of delivering useful information. And then an expansion would be helpful. Like, why? Who cares? Why do we care about this variety of teaching? What's the benefit? I think there's some things you could say about that as a student. It is something that I absolutely believe in. I don't think you should rely on one teacher. It's important to have a range of teachers coming in with different styles and different things to say, and also it helps you to get to the truth, because of course different teachers have different opinions, different teachers work better for different students, and therefore it's very useful, I think, to get a range of, let's say, expert opinions coming in and giving you different information. Even if you have one-to-one classes with a certain teacher, you can still watch other teachers on stream, for example, to get things coming in. All right, thank you very much to everyone who contributed today. We might want to move on and think a little bit about our reflection today. So have a think about the stream today and think about what is the main point that you've learned today. Have you learned anything from any of our 3 students who we listened to today? That's Takeshi, Alexander, and Patu. Thank you very much for joining us. And are there any interesting vocabulary structures that you heard or saw those students use that you could use? This is called peer-to-peer learning. One of the best ways of improving your vocabulary is to listen to other learners. It can be a very useful way of improving your vocabulary. Listening to natives obviously can be good as well, but there's something about listening to learners that we can kind of spot when another learner is onto a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Like you hear another learner speaking English and you're just like, yeah, I like what they're doing there with that. And you sort of start mining that vocabulary from them as well. So Alia says the main point is to read more to enrich your vocabulary. That's interesting. I don't think I mentioned that today, Alia. so do you mean that you learned that outside of the stream, or is that based on something that we've seen today? And then also the question of what do you need more practice with today? So while you have a little think about that reflection, we've got no extra fun tasks because I didn't write them. What I would like to say is I do actually have some online class slots available at the moment. So if you are looking for online classes, you can email me at professorrich@gmail.com and we shall arrange a 30-minute level test and trial. The date today is the 15th of June 2024 and my price currently is £25 per hour with a minimum of 4 hours per month. Terms and conditions apply, and if you email me at that email address, then I will email you the terms and conditions. Obviously, the level test and trial we can arrange without any commitment because, of course, we need to meet and have a little class and see if things are going to work. Can I help you? And do you like the style that I teach with in a one-to-one class? There are a number of students currently taking classes with me from our stream. Also, there's a number of students who don't watch the streams, even though I always tell them, hey, if you're taking classes with me, why don't you watch the streams as well? But there's lots actually that don't. So you can email me there. And my email address is there. Thank you. So we are on to question time, and you can, of course, download the notes from today. And they are available at the link, which is currently in the chat and will in just a moment be down below the video. And make sure, of course, that you smash that like button and hit subscribe. Is there anyone on the stream who hasn't smashed that like button at this point? You mean you've watched almost 3 hours of a stream and you haven't smashed that like button? What is going on there? All right, folks, can I help you with any questions that are on your mind right now, with those of you who are still around? Shall we see what happens if we stream for 5 hours and see how many people are still here? I want to thank you, actually, Alexander and Patu, for jumping on there and having a go. It's not easy to speak live like that. It's also very difficult when you're in a country that doesn't speak English and suddenly you need to speak English. That's very tricky. We call that, in English teaching, we call that TEFL. TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language. So we distinguish it and say English there is a foreign language. It's a language that's not heavily used in your context. And we contrast that with ESOL, which is English to speakers of other languages, or English as a second language, sometimes called ESL, which is when you live in a country which speaks English. So many of my in-person students, well, all of my in-person students are ESL students, whereas most of my online students are TEFL students. And the strategies are different, by the way. It's worth knowing that TEFL students in general tend to have stronger reading and writing skills and grammar, tend to be more familiar with grammar rules, whereas ESOL students tend to be more fluent, tend to have more problems with writing, with reading. Well, writing actually, mainly with writing, reading to some extent, and accuracy. Because, of course, if you live in the country, you focus on communication. So for the most part, ESL students tend to be quite fluent, or they get fluent quicker. Well put, Julia, and of course I totally agree. The main point we've learned today is, first of all, you need to pluck up your courage, especially in two-way live communication, in order to bring up colourful words and speak spontaneously. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? But you have to also think that doing a speaking exam is always going to make you a little bit nervous as well. And so I think that the pressure of speaking live online is sort of similar to that nervousness that you might get from an exam. Alia says, I think learning another language is a lifetime journey. Yeah, I mean, we could apply that to so many things, couldn't we, Alia? Really, learning everything is a lifetime journey. It's just about, when do you decide to stop? And should you ever decide to stop? It's like, for me, learning how to teach is a lifelong journey. Do you think there's a point as a teacher where you stop learning how to teach? Of course not. I mean, who is the perfect teacher? We all make mistakes, we all have issues, and we constantly discover new ways of teaching. So I think, learning is a lifelong journey. I think one of the things about languages is people do come into it and they think, oh, I'm just going to study this for a year and then, my English will be at the level that I'm happy with. And, that might happen. But to be honest, most of the time, what we realize is, if you're going to really get into a language, you just keep going with it. So really, we want to focus on process rather than result, right? Focus on that process. How can we have an effective language learning process that's intended to just keep going? It's not about how do I get here, but it's about what can I do right now that I'm into and I find engaging and can benefit my language learning. Oh, Julia, I totally agree with that. Let's have a little fanfare for that one. Expand your vocabulary mining, and what's this? Put your errors more if need be. Okay, I'm not quite sure about how you've expressed that second part, but expand your vocabulary by mining vocabulary. Yes, we love mining vocabulary. It's a fantastic technique, and one that I'm currently using myself in learning Vietnamese, Japanese, and a little bit of French. Actually, I'm not really learning French. My wife is studying French at the moment, and I'm picking up a little bit from her. She's making huge efforts to learn French. It's very impressive. We're both language enthusiasts, of course. What's the difference between a lifelong and a lifetime teacher? Lifetime teacher. I think what we're talking about here are collocations with lifelong and lifetime. So what could we collocate with lifelong? We were talking about learning, weren't we? A lifelong learner. A lifelong supporter of civil rights. So a lifelong supporter. A lifelong fan. Okay, so we got some collocations with lifelong. How about lifetime? A lifetime of some experience. Yeah. The trip of a lifetime. Which is a one-off and great holiday. A lifetime teacher, does that work as a collocation? He's been a lifetime. It doesn't really work, Alia. It's just the collocation. So what we're really asking with lifelong and lifetime is, what are the collocations? How do we use them? So another thing we say with lifetime is in my lifetime. So we say stuff like, we might see the cure for cancer in our lifetimes. Or in my lifetime, I might see it. I haven't seen anything like this before in my lifetime. My dad said that about the pandemic when it started. All right, Pallavi, relax. I did see your message. Just sometimes I don't quite get things in order. Pallavi says, would you like to do a lesson on computer skills? What do you mean by that? Do you mean the vocabulary of computer skills, or do you mean actually teaching computer skills? The vocabulary. Do you mean the vocabulary of teaching of computer skills? Yeah. Okay. So computer vocabulary. I mean, we could do software or hardware, or both. Yeah. Let me know, Pallavi, if there's anything specific about that you're thinking. Do people in the UK say teacher, mum, sir at the beginning or at the end of their sentences when they talk to someone, so it will sound more polite? Sir. All right, so there's a few things about that. Sir can be used in the military or in certain very strict schools. Use it to refer to teacher, sir. So they will use it in strict schools, especially at high school, about high school level. Just before high school, actually, like late secondary and secondary in general, we see this kind of sir for teacher. Rather than saying Mr. White, then it becomes like sir instead. Do people say teacher? Excuse me, teacher. Actually, people don't say that really in the UK, but foreigners do a lot. Teacher, or even teacher rich. So I'm okay with it. I'm used to it. But in the UK, people don't really say teacher as a title. Mom at the beginning or the end. Yeah, that can be wherever. I mean, mom is like a name, not a title. So how would you use someone's name? Like, hi, Aulia. How are you doing, Aulia? You know, it's just, you just use it as a replacement for a name, right? Rather than a title. A full class on the topic of computer skills. All right. I'll think about it, Pallavi. Obviously, I have some experience in this area. Once upon a time, I had a career in computer skills. Julia says, if you buy mobile devices from our shop, the lifetime service will be provided. A lifetime guarantee. A lifetime guarantee. That's a good one. A lifetime guarantee. We offer a lifetime guarantee. All right. All right. Thank you very much for joining me today, everybody. Make sure that you do, of course, smash that like button and hit subscribe. I'm going to take a rest. And I think our next stream will be on Wednesday. Wasn't sure if I was going to do that, but yeah, go on. Let's have a go. We missed last Wednesday. We're going to make a return to Wednesday streams. I wonder if maybe I enjoy the Wednesday streams more, actually. Maybe Because I'm thinking about whether to stream just once a week or twice a week, or should we be streaming 4 times a week? I don't know. What works best? We'll have to see. We have to be business-minded about this. YouTube is not easy these days, folks. You have to fight for it. All right. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. My name has been ProfRich. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Make the most of it. Enjoy yourselves. You've done your English learning for today. You could, if you want, double down, do some more study, learn some more English, or you can chill out and relax for the rest of the weekend and enjoy the good weather that you have outside. And if you haven't got good weather outside, then you know what? Buy yourself some lovely ice cream from the shops. Kick back and watch some Netflix with ice cream. ProfRich gives you the permission, but just this once, because tomorrow you're going to do loads of exercise and you're going to work off those calories. All right, I'm not encouraging bad habits here. Thank you, everybody, and I will catch you later. Bye for now.